Okay, we wrote the Mishnah on Ayin Aleph Beis 71b. Amrullah, they said to him, Nichtav get l'ishtecha. Should we write a divorce for your wife? Amrullah ksuvu. He said, go write one. And what did they do? He gave them instruction to write a get. He told them, and they went ahead. Amrullah sefer k'sayiv l'edim b'chasmu. They told the scribe, he told them to write it. They went and told the scribe to write it. They also told Adam to sign it, witnesses to sign it. He never told the witness to sign it. Even though they gave the divorce back to him, in other words, they finished the document and they gave it to him to give to his wife, and he gave it to his wife, the document is still invalid. And the reason for this is because he never gave them instructions. He never gave instructions to tell the scribe to write the divorce or the witnesses to sign it. What's necessary? He has to tell the scribe to write it and the witnesses to sign it. So if he didn't give specific instructions, and as you can imagine right away, I'm sure what you're thinking of is Mili. This is a Mili question. Can you appoint somebody to appoint a scribe? So let's see the Gemara. It says the Gemara, time and delay are tnu. The reason here is because they didn't say tnu. Okay, in other words, what did he tell the witnesses? He told them write it. He never told them to give it. Ha'amar tnu, nice, then the messengers would be able to give it. One second. Okay, it's in other words, ksuvu is a very specific instruction. Ksuvu means he's just telling them to write the document. So therefore, they have no authority to go appoint witnesses, let's say, or even to appoint a sefer, a scribe. However, let's say there were 3 people present, and he told them, give a divorce to my wife. So then the presumption of that, when you tell it to 3 people, is that you make them into a court. They can appoint the scribe, they can appoint witnesses. And then you would give it. Mani, whose opinion is this? Rameiri. That if he said tnu, then they can serve as his shluchim, as his messengers, to appoint another shliach to write it, and another 2 witnesses to sign it. Okay, aim and sefer. Let's look at the end of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that it's necessary. The husband himself must tell the scribe to write it, and he must find witnesses and tell them to sign. Who says that he actually has to do that himself? That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi says that you can never tell somebody else to write your divorce. You can never appoint the shliach because it's a problem with Mili. Mili, remember, is to appoint the shliach to perform a task that, let's say, isn't. How do you describe this? Go the other way that we explained it before, which was that if there is an implication in what you're saying, in other words, I didn't directly tell you to appoint a shliach. I told you to write a divorce. You decided to interpret that as to hire somebody to write the divorce. That would be Mili. Mili's would be an implied shlichus. Now, who's the one that says that you must tell the scribe, you must speak to the scribe directly? It's Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Mili lemem shel shliach. There's never that implication where you're ever able to tell a scribe to write a divorce. In other words, you always must speak to the scribe directly. So if that's the case, we have a problem. Reish or Meir of Sefer Rabbi Yossi. The first part of the Mishnah that differentiates between ksuvu and tnu. Ksuvu means write a divorce. It just means write a divorce. Whereas tnu means court should arrange the divorce on my behalf. And arrange means go use Mili to go appoint a scribe to write it and witnesses to sign it. So there's a difference between tnu, meaning the court should arrange the divorce, and ksuvu, write the divorce. Ksuvu is a very narrow description. The only thing I want you to do is just write it. I don't want you to appoint somebody else. I don't want you to hire witnesses. Just write the divorce. That difference is only according to the opinion of Rameir. And according to that difference, if you tell somebody to arrange the divorce, then there's no problem of mili. It's sort of understood that you're going to go hire people, and they're actually going to do the actual writing. We together?
Yep.
The state for Rabbi Yossi, the second part of the mission is Rabbi Yossi. Why? Because the mission says, what's the only solution? You must speak to the scribe directly, the witnesses directly. That's clearly Rabbi Yossi. That says that there's never such a thing as mili. You can never, the implied understanding of the shliach is never sufficient to go ahead and appoint a scribe and or witnesses. So we have a problem here. The first part of the mission is Rameir, the second part is Rabbi Yossi. And the debate really fundamentally is mili. Because tnu doesn't even give what it's interpreted as is arrange.
Mhm.
That's how it's interpreted. It's certainly not specifically arrange, but that's how it's understood. You say tnu, it means that effectively you could do mili. You could, even though you're not really appointed as a shliach to appoint somebody else to write a divorce, but you're allowed to do it. That means that mili must work. A shliach of mili could appoint another shliach. And the second part of the Mishnah is that the shliach has to speak directly to the scribe because mili doesn't work. So which one is it? You together on the question? So Mara says, yeah, well, that's a little challenging, but okay, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do. In Reish or Meir of Sefer Beis, it's true the two parts of the Mishnah seem to disagree with each other, and that's okay. Abai says, Kula Rameir. The entire Mishnah is Rameir. What are we talking about? When do you need to tell the scribe directly? If he didn't say arrange it, he didn't say arrange the divorce to three people, he just said write the divorce. So then he means just write it. He never gave him authority to give the divorce. So what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says if you tell them ksuva write the divorce, it doesn't work. Until you tell the sefer directly. It's not until you tell the sefer directly, or it's until you tell the sefer, until you tell the group tnu instead of ksuva. Arrange it instead of write it. And then they're allowed to go ahead and appoint the scribe. So teretz doesn't work. Okay, our Mishnah is talking about, until now we're talking about whether three people present. Three people comprise a court. And when he tells the court, give the divorce, he means to say you can appoint somebody to write it and sign it. The second part of the Mishnah is talking about whether there aren't three people. There aren't three people. 1 second. So then they're not a court, and therefore they have to write and sign on their own. Okay, hold on. So we're talking about without a court. Another solution for how they can instruct a scribe and instruct witnesses is by doing it in front of three people, by saying tnu in front of three people. Okay, so it obviously can't be Rameir. So the Gemara switches tracks. It must be the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. What are we talking about? Okay, this is we spoke about this before when we spoke about mili about a week ago. Omer Amru means even if mili as an implied shlichus doesn't work. In other words, arrange a divorce according to Rabbi Nosson does not mean go ask the scribe to write it. It means you should write the divorce. You have no authority. You don't have the authority to instruct the sefer to write it, to scribe. But that's because I never told you to tell a sefer to write it. But let's say I tell a group of people, tell a sefer to write the divorce, tell witnesses to sign it, and then you go ahead and give it. In that case, maybe you could appoint a messenger. Maybe a messenger could appoint another messenger. That's not possible because the Mishnah should give another possibility. In other words, telling the guy to write a divorce doesn't work. Telling the messengers to arrange a divorce does not give them the authority to ask someone to write it, unless he told them directly. So there's two ways to solve the problem. Either tell the scribe directly or tell the witnesses directly to tell a scribe. Either scenario works. Moreover, it's not even clear that Rabbi Yossi agrees to the conceptual framework of Amar Amru, that you can tell somebody to appoint a scribe. How do we know this? We saw this previously. If the scribe and a single witness signs the document, it's kosher. But Amar says some sefer, you're talking about that they both signed it. But Amar Chiz explained, this opinion is according to Rabbi Yossi. Okay, what does this mean? The concern here is that maybe the scribe signed without authority. Maybe the guy gave authority to two people to sign the documents, and not the scribe. But they were embarrassed that the scribe's going to think he's not fit to be a witness. So they let the scribe sign. And the problem here is he wasn't appointed, and therefore the divorce is invalid. Says Rabbi Yossi, because the law is that only the husband is allowed to speak to the scribe directly, because the only way to appoint the scribe is for the husband to appoint him directly. So therefore, if the scribe signs, presumably he was instructed to do so. And therefore, there's no concern that maybe the scribe signed without permission. What do we see from here? That according to Rabbi Yossi, there is no way for a scribe to write a document unless he was specifically spoken by the husband. And therefore, evidently, Omer Amru, telling a shliach to go tell a scribe to write a document is not valid. So you see that Rabbi Yossi does not even agree with Omer Amru. Now, when we last saw this in the Gemara, which was on about a couple of days ago, we questioned this assumption. The Gemara offered possibly other alternatives. The Gemara here doesn't offer the alternatives. The Gemara just switches. The Gemara agrees it can't be Rabbi Yossi. We said that we're on top of 72a, second line. It could be a problem. In other words, if like I said, there's a concern here. What's the concern? He may have told two people, tell a scribe to write a divorce, and they were too embarrassed to tell the scribe not to sign it, and therefore the scribe signed it. But the husband never gave such instruction, and the divorce is invalid. Now, if you say Amr doesn't work, such a scenario is impossible, because only the husband can instruct a cipher. So therefore, presumably, according to Rabbi Yossi, that's the case. Amr does not work. And therefore, there's no concern if a cipher signs a document, because presumably the husband told him to do so. We go back to Reisha Rameir Sefer Rabbi Yossi, that we have no alternative but to say that the mission itself is disagreeing with itself. Rashi says, he taught the entire mission is Rabbi Yossi. The Mishnah means to say as follows. Is sort of not only the obvious solution, but also a less obvious solution. So one second. Okay. So let's read the mission outside according to the new version of Rabbi Yossi, and then we'll sort of see the Gemara. Okay. So until now we had a problem. What was the problem? First part of the mission says Tnu and Ksuvu. There's a difference between Tnu and Ksuvu. Tnu means you have the authority, go appoint whoever you want. Clearly, Rameir's opinion that allows for meeting. Right? Second part of the mission is what's the solution? Talk to the cipher directly, i.e., nothing else works except for speaking to the cipher directly. What's that? Obviously, that's Rabbi Yossi. There's no such thing as mili. Together, Now we're going to change the mission. I'm like that previous mission was incorrect. This is the mission now. The only solution is tell us scribe directly. Not any other solution. Not the solution of Tnu, of telling him arrange the divorce, which would be Rabbi Meir's opinion, because we're not going with Rabbi Meir, we're going with Rabbi Yossi. Not the solution where it was Omer Amru, where I told him to appoint somebody else as a scribe. Not the solution where there were 3 people present. And neither the solution of, and the only solution is to speak to the scribe directly. So in other words, this that you're differentiating in the first Mishnah, in the beginning of the Mishnah, between Ksuvu and Tnu, it's incorrect. Because included in the Mishnah statement as the only solution being tell a scribe directly, that debunks 3 alternatives. Number 1, Tnu, arrange a divorce, which doesn't work because we're going with Rabbi Yossi, who does not allow you to appoint a shliach, even if you said Tnu, arrange a divorce. Number 2, even if you said in front of 3 people as a court, it still doesn't make a difference. Immediately let him serve the shliach. And number 3, even if you said Omer Amro. So the last line of the mission negates all these possibilities, and therefore the entire mission is Rabbi Yossi. It's all included in that final statement. That the only solution is telling the scribe directly. Together? Okay. 1 second. It's not only that. Not only a scenario where he didn't say Tnu, even if he did say Tnu. Even in a scenario where he had 3 people present. Even if he had 3 people present, he told them Tnu and go appoint a cipher and appoint witnesses. Edom. Also, that doesn't work. The only solution is to speak to the cipher directly. Tanya Kav said to Rashi, the Bride supports the opinion of Rashi. Cuts of Sefer Lishma. The Sefer wrote the document Lishma, v'chasmu edim Lishma, and this witness is signed Lishma. Afal pish kasvu v'chasmu v'nasnu lay. 1 second. Okay. So in other words, the sefer and the witness assigned the divorce, all for the right reasons. The Noslan they gave the divorce, so they get bottle. It's not kosher unless the scribe himself heard from the husband, or the witnesses heard directly from the husband. There's no appointing a shliach to appoint witnesses or a sefer. Two things here. First of all, Omer doesn't work, and second of all, he has to actually hear the voice, and not like Rav Kahana. If you remember, Rav Kahana said that a deaf mute that writes his instructions works. No, he has to hear the voice. That's the opinion of this brisa. That's the opinion of accordingly. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Okay, that was the most difficult Gemara today. Now it's a less difficult Gemara. Okay, Zegit. Okay, basic idea here in the Mishnah is as follows. You cannot divorce somebody after you're dead, right? Which should seem pretty obvious. Now the question sort of is which words mean after he dies. What is the alternative kosher expression? Or a guy says, "I'm divorcing you today if I die." Right? This is something that any soldier who went out to fight in King David's battles wrote a divorce to his wife. The divorce said, "If I don't return from battle, if I'm a prisoner of war or I'm absent without leave, then you're divorced." So you can go marry somebody else. You won't become an agona. Okay. Okay, so the guy says, but the key thing is, in order for it to work, it needs to be today I'm giving you the divorce if the condition doesn't happen within the next time period. This is a divorce if I die. This is a divorce if I die when I die from this illness. So this is a divorce after I die. In all these situations, he did not say anything. These are types of divorces that are in effect after he dies. Let's say he says, today it's a divorce if I die. Today it's a divorce if I die. Then it works. It's a valid divorce. Let's say somebody mixes and matches. He says, it's divorced today, and after I die. What does that mean? We don't know what it means. Nobody knows what it means. So it's get ve'ena get. It's a divorce, but it's not a divorce. In other words, we don't know if he means today or if he means after I die. Because he said both of them. It's not clear what he meant. And therefore, it's a suffix get. This is divorce today if I die from this illness. And then he got better. And then what happened? He became ill. And he died. So you evaluate him. Is it because of the first illness, or is it not because of the first illness? Because of the second illness. Okay. Yeah, this is like, did he die with COVID or because of COVID? Right? That's really the question here. Did he die because of the first illness? Or did he die after the first illness, but maybe died from some other cause? No. He was terminally ill with cancer, but he died in a car accident. Okay. Okay, let's begin the Gemara. Alma emes klach hamisadami. The Mishnah says, if I die, it's as if I'm saying when I die. And it's effectively saying the same as I'm giving the divorce after I die. And then the Mishnah says, if a guy gives divorce today, if I die. Okay, so let's understand this. The guy says, I'm giving divorce after I die. And then he says, today after I die. What do we say? I don't know what he means. After I die means after I die. He said today, I'm not sure what he means. However, let's say a guy says, I'm giving a divorce imesi if I die. What does that mean? It means giving a divorce after you die. Then the guy says, I'm giving a divorce today if I die. Then all of a sudden divorce is fully kosher. That makes sense. Why is it different from la chamisa? Understand the question? So what's the obvious answer? If I die means two things. It might mean a conditional based on today. Today a divorce if I die, and it could mean after I die. If he says today, it's as if he says a condition. Today if I die. But if it didn't say today, it doesn't mean if I die, it means the if there means when. Okay. In other words, if he dies, then the divorce is valid, which effectively means it's valid after he dies. Okay. We have time. Okay. This is a little more complicated, this Gemara. Okay, let's try the first. There's two versions of this Gemara. Let's go for the first version first. Zeget emesi lo amar klum. Yeah. The guy says, if he says, this is if I die, this should be a divorce. It's not a valid divorce. Why? Because we explained, if I die means, if I die, then it should be a divorce. Now, then at that point, it's a little too late because he's already dead. Okay. Now, Rav Huna disagrees with the Mishnah. And you require chalitza, meaning this is a suffix get. Maybe it is a good divorce. Gemara says, the Mishnah says it's worthless. So Gemara says, the Mishnah is not disagreeing because the Mishnah is saying that in other words, one second. Meaning that it's not a valid divorce, but you also can't do even with it because it's a suffix divorce. The Gemara says, hold on a second. The second part of the Mishnah, where a guy says, today after I die, that mission, then we clearly differentiate between a woman who's permitted completely and a woman who requires chalitza. So if the Mishnah only differentiates between someone who requires chalitza and someone who's completely divorced in the end of the Mishnah, then obviously in the beginning of the Mishnah, there's no such distinction. When the Mishnah says divorce is not valid, it means it's zero, not valid at all.
So the suffragette also has implications for Kollel once committed.
Correct. That in the beginning, in the first case of the Mishnah, because divorce is worthless, she can do yibum. So Gemara says you're right. The Mishnah is the rabbi's opinion for Rav Huna the Amar Rabbi Yosi. Rav Huna is the opinion of Rabbi Yosi. The Amar is Mane Shal Shtar Mechiach Chalav. Rabbi Yosi's basic opinion is that when a guy writes a document, the date in the document indicates that he wants the transaction done today. Because why else would you write a date in the document? Unless there was some sort of effect that's supposed to happen immediately. And therefore, Rabbi Yosi would argue that if a guy says, I'm giving you a divorce, if I die, and the divorce has a date on it, that means today if I die. And therefore, the divorce should be valid. So what's the obvious question? If the divorce is valid, then why would you require chalitza? It should be valid. If you'll say, if you'll say, the Rav Huna didn't know if the halacha was like Rabbi Yosi or not. Is it a question? But Rabbi Ravua fell ill. Rav Huna, the protagonist of our Gemara, and Rav Nachman come to visit. Rav Huna says to Rav Nachman, let's ask Rabbi Ravua the following question: halacha Rabbi Yosi ain't halacha? Is the halacha like Rabbi Yosi or not? Where is it? Rabbi Ravua says, "Time to Rabbi Yosi lo yadana halacha." I don't understand his reasoning, and you can tell me that the halacha is like him. He says to him, "At ba'minei, at ba'minei halacha." One second. You asked me the question of halacha. The time of Rabbi Yosi, and I mean halacha, and I'll tell you the reason. So they asked Rav Huna, they said to him, what's the story? Is halacha like Rabbi Yosi? Rav, halacha Rabbi Yosi. Rav said, you're right, the halacha is like Rabbi Yosi. In other words, Rav Huna is telling Rabbi Ravua that the halacha does follow Rabbi Yosi. But enough when they said, this is the reason. Because the date of the document proves that there's an intention for it to happen today. Okay, so again, if the halacha is like Rabbi Yosi, why do you require chalitza? Why is divorce only a suffix? It should be completely valid. The day proves that he intended on saying hayom, as if he said today. We don't know. Rabbi Yosi, okay, so the question is, Rabbi Yosi sort of is saying this by document. Give me a second. So, for example, if somebody writes a document to his son, it says you should get the field after I die. What it means is you get the field today, and you get to enjoy the fruits after I die, because the document has a date. That's where everything was written down in the documents. So you can sort of interpreting the date of the documents. However, one second. However, in the scenario of this divorce, the statement of imasi if I die presumably wasn't written in the divorce. It wasn't written in the document. It was said verbally. And now the question is, will Rabbi Yosi interpret the verbal statement based on the date in the documents? The Gemara says, is that really such a question? Is that a suffix? This is a divorce if I don't come within the next 12 months. And he dies within the 12 months. And again, it's not a valid divorce. Because what was a divorce? If I don't come, then it should be a divorce at the end of the 12 months. But he died in the 12 months. So the divorce couldn't be validated at the end of the 12 months. If 12 months came and he was still in Australia, that's fine. That's a valid divorce. He's divorcing her at the end of the 12 months. But if he's dead, he can't divorce her. The Tanya alone we learned, Rabbi Seinu Hatir Lehinosai. The rabbis permitted her to remarry. V'amrina, we said, Man Rabbi Seinu, who's the rabbis? Amar Yehudah Amar Shmuel Be'edina Deshor Mishcha. It's the rabbis that permitted the oil of non-Jews. V'savril, and they hold Rabbi Yossi, like the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. The Amar Manish Shtar Mechiach Alav. The date of the star proves that when he said it should be divorced if I don't come back in 12 months, and he meant to say it should be divorced today, and he said this verbally, and we see it's a valid divorce. So again, what's the doubt in Rabbi Yossi? Why does Rav Huna say that according to Rabbi Yossi it's a suffix get? Question is, you're right that Rabbi Yossi's opinion himself is that if he said it's verbally, the divorce is valid, because the date of the document can prove the verbal statement as well. It contextualizes the verbal statement. But who said the halacha is like him in that scenario? That was what his question was. And of course, the Gemara says, I mean, is this a doubt? Rava says, this is a divorce if I die. V'shani meis, or that I will die. Hareza get. It's a valid divorce. Kisha almost when I die. Ula achar mitzvah, and after I die, ain't again. It's not a divorce. Hey chidami. What's this Bryce talk? What's the statement of Rava discussing? If we're talking about where he said mehayim from today, and I'm going with the opinion of the rabbis. That's obvious. Obviously, the rabbis say if you say imesi, mehayim imesi, then the divorce is a valid divorce. Because mehayim means today. Imesi is if I die. It's a good divorce. It's a scenario where he did not say mehayim. I'm going with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. And Shema Amina halach Rabbi Yossi. And evidently we see that Rava holds that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi even verbally. So Gemara says it could be the Rava Pshita, and the Rav Huna Mesapik. It could be that Rava claimed certainty that the halacha was like Rabbi Yossi even balpeh in a verbal statement. That the date of the document contextualizes verbal statements. But Rav Huna wasn't sure. Rav Huna wasn't sure, and therefore he said that we treat the divorce as a suffix get. Another possibility is that this statement of Rava is actually according to the Rabbanan. We're talking about where he said from today. Rabbanan's the Rabbi's opinion. That I will die is as if you said if I will die. It's the same thing. Kisha almost when I die is like saying Kalachar Misa after I die. And that was the important statement. Okay. You want to continue? You stop here? Yeah. Stop here? Okay, stop here. We'll take this. Tomorrow we will have Daf Yomi at 7:30, going through the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And we'll continue from here on. We'll continue.